The room was silent after the vote. 100 counselors, each from a different star-spanning species, had cast their mark on the hollow slate. The final tally blinked in harsh red, 97 in favor, 3 against. Earth was marked for invasion. Counselor Thurak, of the Varn Dominion, leaned back, his mandibles twitching in smug delight. Primitive apes with delusions of significance, he muttered, they'll fall within a cycle, their planet's rich in iron, uranium, and geothermal access. Let them scream while we strip it dry. None in the chamber disagreed, not publicly anyway. Earth's entry into the galactic radar came far too late, their signal crude. Desperate broadcasts of culture, war, music, and violence was detected only a decade ago. Most species assumed they'd still be fighting with sharpened metal or blowing themselves apart in pointless internal feuds, a species too emotional, too unstable, too human. What the Council didn't account for, however, was what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their weapons. Those were outdated. It wasn't their ships, they had barely touched interstellar travel. It was something older, something primal. 12 days after the Council's vote, a stealth probe entered Earth's orbit. No transmission, just data collection. It was shot down in under 8 minutes. Missile cold, fast, brutal, with 0 warning. They never recovered the wreckage. On board the flagship Corathin, dreadnought stationed in a solar hide point behind Jupiter, General Hrevek watched the planetary scans with a casual arrogance. They barely noticed us, our cloaking holds, this will be surgical. His adjutant, a young Talari named Breen, cleared his throat. Sir, there's something odd. They've launched 2 vessels from the surface, small, fast, no registry on our logs. Send interceptors, I want them. Captured, not destroyed, Hrevek replied. Let's find out what Earth calls a pilot. He didn't say it, but he was curious to see what courage looked like from the inside of a monkey's skull. 2 hours later, only 1 interceptor returned. It drifted, cockpit cracked open, pilot missing. What replaced him was a single item wedged into the ship's central console. Something foreign, hard, and strange. Crowbar, no explosives, no hacking tool, just a solid, dense, heavy piece of curved steel. Is this a threat? Breen asked. Hrevek said nothing, but for the first time in his long career, his throat went dry. Back on Earth, 2 men sat in a dim underground hangar beneath Colorado. The room smelled like oil, cold, concrete, and gunpowder. One of them, rough-faced with a fresh scar across his temple, lit a cigarette and leaned over the glowing map table. They've surrounded the moon, naval blockade, static orbital patrols. They think we're cornered, he said. The other man didn't respond at first. He was adjusting the exosuit on his arm, a half-patched relic of old military tech mixed with a human touch of mechanical madness. What's the play, Captain? The scarred man asked. The second man finally spoke. His voice was gravel. Come, deadly. We're going up there. They'll kill us before we break orbit. Not if we make them think we're just cargo ships. And when they scan us, the captain smirked. We won't be there by then. He flicked a switch. The map table flickered into motion, showing the dreadnought, its engines idle, positioned just beyond Mars. They want to see what humanity can do. He said, then let's remind them why Earth was never conquered. Back on the Council home world, the three dissenters, the only ones who had voted against the invasion, were silent. 2. They had studied humans, not through probes or algorithms, but through history, through war records, through diaries from Hiroshima, Verdun, Fallujah, and Stalingrad. One of them, a blind aquatic seer from the Tulare Pools, muttered, "They do not fight to win, they fight because they refuse to lose." But no one heard him over the thunderous approval of conquest, and it was already too late. 3 ships ascended from the Earth's surface that night. Not state-of-the-art, not beautiful, not even fully tested. They were hybrids, part stolen tech, part patched together wreckage from Earth's short, furious history of aerial warfare. One of them used engine parts from a scrapped commercial airliner, the other 2 had guidance systems jury-rigged from decommissioned ballistic missile systems. They weren't perfect, they didn't need to be. They just needed to move fast and explode loudly. Inside the lead ship, Captain Reese tightened the straps across his chest, a beat-up sidearm clipped to his thigh. He wasn't a trained pilot, none of them were, but every man in that cockpit had seen combat, real messy combat, not simulations. They weren't chosen for their skills, they were chosen for one reason. They knew how to die with impact. Reese stared at the small screen flickering near his knee, a satellite feed stitched together from private networks and repurposed global infrastructure. It showed the enemy formation in high orbit. 8 ships, cold and motionless like predators waiting in the dark, cloaked but visible to the human systems through pattern recognition and algorithm someone's teenage daughter had coded between history homework and ramen noodles. We break past the first patrol line and dump the decoys, Reese muttered. Then we scatter. Ship 2 veers toward Mars. Ship 3 slings around the moon. I go straight for the jugular. Jugular being that big ugly and NBSP, hiding behind Mars. The man in the second seat asked. He was bald, tattooed down to his knuckles, and clearly loving every second of the chaos ahead. That's the one, the dreadnought. If I'm lucky, I get close. If I'm really lucky, I get inside. And if you're not, Reese cracked a half smile. Then they learn what a human corpse looks like at Mach 20. The other man chuckled, tapped the ignition, and the ship began its violent ascent. Up in space on board the Corinthian dreadnought, alarms blared before the human ships even cleared the ionosphere. They launched again, Breen said, staring at the blinking red dots appearing on the screen. 3 this time. General Hrevek leaned forward, narrowing his slitted eyes. Same type as before. Similar construction, heavily shielded. But erratic in trajectory. They're not traveling in formation. That's strange. No, that's human, Hrevek said bitterly. Send the interceptors, all of them, no survivors. And if they eject, shoot the escape pods too. Sir, number, no prisoners. Not anymore. For a moment, Breen hesitated. He thought about the crowbar, about the interceptor team that never came back, about how easily Earth seemed to adapt, to twist chaos into strategy. Then he turned and gave the command. Reese watched the ships coming towards them, dark figures like insects with glowing eyes. He tapped the screen twice, decoys out the sides of the 3 human vessels. peeled open, releasing dozens of small, rapidly rotating metal pods, each one designed to emit heat signatures, mimic movement patterns, and confuse automated targeting. The alien interceptors, fast but reliant on cold logic, moved towards the most likely threats. Two of the human ships peeled off. Reese didn't. He punched the throttle. "Come on, you alien bastards," he hissed. "Let me show you what vengeance smells like." The Dreadnought's bridge went tense. "One of them's heading straight for us," Breen announced, stunned. "Not evading, not hiding, he's coming head-on." "Fools," Revok spat. "Prepare main cannons. Target ship trajectory 12.52. Fire at will," but the cannon didn't fire. Instead, systems went dark for 6 full seconds. On Earth, a small black ops group hidden in a decommissioned research base in Antarctica cheered. Their virus, disguised as a music file, downloaded from Earth's own global net, had made it into the Dreadnought's system through an intercepted transmission just 2 days earlier. 6 seconds was all Reese needed. The ship shuddered violently as he cut power and rerouted everything to the heat shields. The Dreadnought loomed in front of him, now a floating behemoth of silent steel and layered armor. It wasn't just a ship, it was a fortress. Reese aimed for its lower flank, the hangar bay half open, still unsealed. He didn't need permission to enter, just speed. As he crossed the final 1,000 kilometers, enemy fire came alive. Lasers, pulses, gravitational snares. All automated, all lethal. The shields groaned, buckled. One wing tore off, oxygen hissed, but he didn't stop. At the last second, he launched from the cockpit in an ejection pod. Smaller, faster, lined with explosives. It punched through the hangar shield and slammed into the wall like a comet. Inside the Dreadnought, chaos erupted. Council Command didn't hear about the breach until 2 hours later. By then, Reese had done what no one thought possible. He didn't kill the Dreadnought. He didn't destroy their fleet. He did something far worse. He humiliated them. Using only scavenged tech and sheer improvisation, he disabled their engines, stole encrypted star maps, and triggered a chain reaction in their fuel storage bay. He didn't blow the ship, he crippled it and vanished through an airlock hatch with half their data cores under his arm. One man, a human, a primate with duct tape and a death wish. On Earth, global leaders argued. The UN was a ghost of what it used to be. Military factions no longer answered to nations. They answered to results. And the man now holding all their attention was sitting in a warehouse in Alaska, shirtless, bruised, and drinking whiskey. "Reese, you hit them," one of the officials asked, leaning over the table, sweat pouring down his neck. "I didn't hit them, I embarrassed them," Reese said, pouring another glass. "They came thinking we were bugs. I showed them we're roaches. Roaches. Unkillable, annoying, and we breed in darkness." Nobody laughed. One of the younger tacticians leaned forward. "They'll retaliate. Let them," Reese said. Far across the galaxy, on the Council's main moon station, a meeting was called. Not all the counselors attended. Some were dead, some had vanished after Earth's first few strikes. Others were simply too afraid to show their faces. The surviving counselors sat in silent disbelief as the footage played on a loop. The moment Reese entered the Dreadnought, his image blurred and Frantic, a man who had no right to be there. One of the older counselors slammed his hand on the table. We declared war on barbarians. The Tolari seer looked up again, blind eyes glowing faintly. No, he said. We declared war on the descendants of every monster we ever feared. No one responded. On the dreadnought, Breen walked through the ruins of the lower engine bay. Corpses floated, some burnt, others frozen. He found a wall scorched with words, burned in by hand. Next time we send more. Breen swallowed hard, and for the first time he understood the message. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Back on Earth, Reese opened the encrypted data and smiled. It wasn't just star maps. It wasn't just fleet locations. It was the Council's archive, war strategy, species biology, weak points, and most importantly, infighting, civil conflicts, grudges. They weren't a united front. They were a glass empire held together by fear. And Reese had just found the hammer. The cold inside the Alaskan bunker was almost a comfort. The heaters had failed. Again, nothing new. But the chill kept people sharp. Softness had been burned out of them months ago. Comfort was a weakness, and right now, weakness got you erased. Reese sat in front of 3 rusted monitors patched together with copper wire and leftover smartphone screens. His fingers moved fast, typing with the kind of precision born not from training but from desperation, from obsession. Each key he tapped cracked open another layer of the stolen Council data, bits and pieces, names, coordinates, species, with internal fractures and ancient hatreds duct taped together under the illusion of galactic order. He smirked. They're not a coalition, he muttered. They're a pile of enemies pretending they don't hate each other. Behind him, Commander Briggs walked in. Older, lean, a limp in his right leg. From a botched raid in Jakarta. He chewed toothpicks like they were cigarettes, always clicking them between his teeth. When he was stressed, he was clicking now. So what's our angle? Briggs asked. Reese leaned back. We stopped thinking like defenders. That's what they expect, for us to stay down here, hiding in bunkers, scraping for air and intel. We flipped the game. Briggs crossed his arms. You mean hit them? I mean break them, not just one ship. Not a raid. We fracture their entire alliance. How? Reese turned to the 3rd screen. A species profile loaded, the Saurians. Tall, predatory, lizard-like creatures, with a deep culture of honor and a blood feud against the Narwhal. They're aquatic, more sophisticated rivals. They had fought for centuries before the Council forced a ceasefire. According to the records, the ceasefire was 1 Council vote away from collapse. Reese grinned. We give them a reason to start it up again. 6,000 light-years away, the Council's war chamber was under lockdown. Not for safety, for shame. The news had spread faster than any official transmission. A lone human had boarded a Council dreadnought, disabled it, and walked away with their military intelligence files. Half the outer systems had already begun to question the Council's strength. Trade routes were being challenged. Pirates, human-inspired pirates, had started using crowbars and guerrilla tactics in deep space raids. Morale was crumbling. Thuric of the Varn Dominion, who had once laughed at the very idea of Earth resistance, now seethed behind sealed doors. His species had suffered the most since the breach. 2 supply depots gone, 1 embassy firebombed. Primitives, he snarled, they think this proves superiority, that one man can shame the council. Across the room, the Tolari seer stirred. Not one man, he said, an idea, you made them desperate, you gave them purpose. That's more dangerous than any weapon. Thurick pointed a claw. Then we erase the idea, we burn Earth to glass, no prisoners, no messages. But the council president shook his head. He was a stoic, frail insectoid whose calm had once brokered peace between 4 warring systems. Now his voice barely masked the fear. Retaliation won't undo this. We strike too hard and the outer systems revolt. Then what? Control the narrative, say the breach was internal sabotage, a traitor. Anything. Thurick slammed his clawed fist into the table. They saw him. He wrote on our walls with fire. No one replied. Because the truth was worse than any lie. Humanity had shown its teeth. In the Black Zone, a lawless region between Council territory and neutral stars, 3 cloaked ships emerged from hyperspace. Their insignia none. Their crew all human. Reese stood at the helm of the lead ship. It wasn't his first command, and it wouldn't be his last. Their mission wasn't destruction. It was seduction. A strike team led by Briggs had been sent to a Saurian outpost disguised as council inspectors. They wore artificial scales, mimicked posture, even downloaded speech patterns. They didn't need to trick the Saurians. Just push them. 1 carefully leaked message, 1 doctored video, a fabricated call between Gnarl command ships mocking the Saurians, claiming humans were their dogs, weapons on leashes. It was enough. The Saurian general barked an order. We return to war. Burn the fish. Just like that, the first crack in the council's armor split wide open. By the time council command heard about the Saurian assault on Nariel outposts, it was too late. Entire fleets turned on each other. Every attempt at negotiation dissolved under accusations and retribution. The war Reese wanted had started, and Earth had fired a single shot. Back in the underground command center, Briggs leaned over the table, watching the chaos unfold across 20 different screens. This is madness, he said, almost in disbelief. Reese didn't look up. No, this is balance. We've been fighting to survive. Now they fight each other to keep power. They're bleeding from the inside. Briggs grunted. You realize they're going to know it's us eventually. Reese finally turned. His eyes were hard now, colder than the Arctic ice above them. Let them. While the council scrambled to stabilize its power, Earth shifted. Bunkers became training grounds. Abandoned labs were resurrected. Nations that once hated each other now funneled everything they had into one cause: vengeance. For every satellite the council destroyed, Earth launched 2 more. For every human ship shot down, 3 rose in its place. They stopped waiting to be invaded. They stopped reacting. They started hunting. Reese stood alone in a hangar, watching the next generation of human ships being built. They were still rough, metal welded by hand, systems run by wire instead of code. But every one of them carried something the council could never manufacture. Resolve. A young engineer approached, holding a data slate. Sir, prototype for the M-Core. Disruptor is online. It'll shut down any Council shield within range. Reese nodded. Good. Keep the pulse dirty. I want it to fry. Their computers make them feel it. Yes, sir. And the message? The engineer hesitated. You're sure you want it broadcasted? Before each strike. Reese turned toward him, voice like gravel. Word for word. The engineer nodded. The message was simple. This is Earth. You came for blood. Now we come for yours. Across the galaxy, Council systems began shutting down. Trade stopped. Alliances fractured. War spread. And in the shadows, humans moved like ghosts, unseen, unbound, unmerciful. On a Council supply moon, a transport carrying over 2,000 soldiers exploded. Mid-launch, investigators found the cause, an explosive embedded in a food crate, labeled humanitarian rations. A trap, a message, and inside the ruins, scratched into the walls, another phrase. We learned fast. Reese stood over a map covered in red dots, each one marked a system hit by human hands. Some were direct strikes. Others were sabotages. A few were whispers that turned into civil wars. Briggs stared at it too, arms folded. We're winning. Reese shook his head. Not yet. They still think we're a mistake. A virus, something they can cleanse. Then what do we do? Reese stared at the largest dot, the Council's capital planet. We show them we're not a virus, he said. We're evolution. They called it Operation Black Vein. And no one who signed on expected to come back. The target wasn't just any outpost. It was Marith 4, the logistical heart of the Council's inner ring supply chain. It was a moon-sized fortress orbiting the dying star of Ivos, shielded by layered turrets, automated fleets, and surveillance so tight not even asteroid dust could pass through without triggering alarms. No human had ever gotten close to it, which is why Reese chose it. He stared at the 3D rendering on the war table, its details drawn from stolen schematics and months of deep signal leaks. The Council believed it untouchable, the kind of arrogance built over centuries of dominance. We take this, Reese said, pointing to the glowing heart of the station, and we send a message across every system that their safety is an illusion. The room was silent, not because they doubted him, but because they knew he meant it. Reese rode aboard the Wraith, a stealth dropship forged from the skeleton of a downed Council frigate and welded in a Siberian hangar by ex-miners and former war criminals. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't clean. It was perfect. Inside, the crew was stripped down, a skeleton team of 12 men, no ranks, no ceremony, just killers, engineers, and ghosts with nothing left to lose. Beside Reese sat Merrick, a former demolitions expert with one eye, a fused wrist, and a tattoo of his dead son's name on his throat. You know this is suicide, Merrick said, as he strapped in. Reese tightened his harness. Yeah. And you're good with that? Reese didn't answer, just stared out the viewport at the stars blinking like indifferent gods. He wasn't good with it. He was ready for it. The drop into Ivo space was clean, far cleaner than anyone expected. The automated surveillance grid was down for exactly 4.7 seconds, thanks to a virus that Earth had snuck into a merchant vessel 7 months ago. They were inside the system before the Council even realized the ship had breached the perimeter. Reese stood behind Merrick, watching as the Marith 4 station loomed ahead like a dead city in orbit. Lights flickered across its underbelly. Small defense ships drifted in lazy circles, confident that nothing from Earth would ever dare get this close. Again. Set us to freefall, Reese said. You serious? Do it. The Wraith's engines died mid-drift. From this point on, they were just space junk, another piece of debris heading for the trash zone near the lower decks. The ship groaned, metal screeching as atmospheric entry scraped across the station's shield bubble. By the time the Council caught it, it was already too late. They landed like a virus in a wound, silent, unnoticed, and deadly. Reese moved fast through the lower maintenance corridors. Every hall reeked of antiseptic and metal. The lights were too clean, the air too sterile. It felt like walking through the bones of something ancient and diseased. They didn't speak. Every second mattered. The objective was clear. Plant the core crasher, an EMP laced with Earth's custom-designed corruption virus, and an NBSP, the Marith 4 station, from the inside. But as they reached the central chamber, alarm screamed. They'd been spotted. A Council patrol rounded the corner. Weapons raised, mouths open to scream. Warning, and Merrick dropped 2 of them with homemade slugs before they blinked. One of the soldiers fired, hitting Reese in the side. He dropped, pain roaring in his ribs, but rolled and returned fire. The bolt took the last alien in the throat. He hit the floor, twitching once before going still. Merrick dragged Reese up. You good? Reese coughed blood and nodded. Not dead yet. They pushed forward, dragging the device towards the reactor chamber. It weighed nearly 100 kilos, raw tech, barely stable, held together by welds and wires and vengeance. Back on Earth, Command watched the signal flicker. They're in, someone whispered. Another nodded. Half the station's comms are down. They're scrambling. And in the war room beneath Iceland's dead glaciers, a countdown began. If the crasher detonated inside the station's core, the pulse wouldn't just disable Marith 4. It would send a ripple across satellites, fleets, and relay posts, showing every species in the galaxy one simple truth. The Council bled. Inside the core chamber, the lights were flickering. Reese and Merrick dropped the crasher beside the control column. Timer or remote? Merrick asked. Reese hesitated. He looked at the readout, then at the cracked viewport showing the stars blinking behind the security shield. Timer. Give me 20 minutes. You're not coming back, are you? Reese shrugged. They think we don't sacrifice, that we don't commit. You sure you want to be the myth? Reese turned. No, I want to be the mistake they never recover from. The rest of the team exfiltrated through the sewage tunnel carved from the station's waste system. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't safe. But they got out. Reese stayed behind. He limped through the station, bleeding and broken, but upright. He entered the central command chamber and activated the emergency intercom. Across Marith 4 and through its network, uplink, a human face appeared on every screen. Reese, scarred, bleeding, grinning. This is Earth, he said, voice low and clear. You voted to invade, you thought. We were weak, you thought we'd crawl. He held up the detonator. You were wronged. Then the screen went black. The explosion wasn't flashy. It was Ugly, raw, corrupt, primal. The crasher didn't just detonate, it consumed, it ate through Marith 4's circuits like acid, melted its defenses, scrambled its communications, every ship within 5,000 km went dark. Earth's signal, the message, rode the shockwave across the stars. We are not yours, we are not prey, we are the future. Council command collapsed into panic. Supply routes died, reinforcements stalled, fleets trapped in deep space, with no guidance, no fuel, no idea what had just happened. And in their silence, fear began to whisper. This is what humans do. They don't fight wars. They end them. 3 days later, Reese's body was recovered by a small scavenger drone. The council never got it, the humans did. And when they buried him, no state funeral, no flags, no songs, just dirt. And a headstone carved with his own words. We don't fight to win, we fight because we refuse to lose. In the following weeks, Earth didn't just gain ground, it gained followers. Small planets under council oppression began to rebel. Mercenary crews defected, council supply captains went dark, joining the resistance or disappearing with Earth's offers of freedom. Marith 4 was never rebuilt, it became a symbol, a ghost station, a grave. And every time the council told the story, the name they feared most wasn't a species. It was a man. They thought it would end with Reese. The council's mistake wasn't underestimating him. It was assuming he was the peak of human resistance, that his death would scare the rest into crawling back underground like frightened vermin. But what they didn't understand was what Reese became. Not a soldier, a blueprint. Across Earth's fractured zones, from the ruins of Paris to the iron domes of what used to be Beijing, his message was more than remembered. It was repeated, burned into the backs of bomber jackets, scrawled on missile casings, carved into helmets. We fight because we refuse to lose. Commander Briggs stood on the edge of the launch deck at Site 9, staring into the swirling storm that had swallowed the northern ice fields. His right leg ached in the cold. The wound from Jakarta always did in bad weather. He'd buried Reese with his own hands, dug the hole with a rusted shovel alone, because no one else had the guts to see him go into the ground. And now, 2 weeks after the Marith 4 detonation, he'd received the data Reese died to deliver. He read it twice, then once more, then walked into the command chamber and said only one thing: prep every ship we've got. The council's retaliation didn't come as a single strike, it came as a massacre. Not on the battlefield, but from orbit. They picked 5 human cities, 5 centers of resistance, and glassed them. No demands, no speeches, no warning. Just silent, then fire from space. Their ships hovered, launching thermal detonators and bioreactive incendiaries, designed to cook everything beneath. Oceans boiled, buildings melted. Children vaporized before they could scream. They erased over 200 million lives in one night. When the transmissions reached Earth's central command, no one spoke for nearly 20 minutes, not even Briggs. He just watched the footage again and again and again, until his jaw clenched so hard his teeth cracked. Then he turned, spit blood into a rag and said, "Send the message." The message was simple. Every council world with a defense network linked to the Marith grid, which was nearly all of them, began receiving a data surge, Not a virus, a video. Unfiltered, raw. It showed one of the glassed cities. A camera drone hovering low, recording. Rows of charred bodies and melted skin. A child clutching a doll fused to her hand. A father's skeleton curled over a son's. Then it cut to Briggs. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He looked into the camera. Like it owed him money. This was your answer to defiance, he said. We gave you a chance to retreat, to reconsider. You answered with fire. He paused. Now we answer. Briggs took Fleet Omega, Earth's first true offensive battle group, and punched through the outer systems like a rusted blade. The ships weren't elegant, they were monsters built from rage and broken satellites, every one of them painted with graffiti and scars from 1,000 old wars. Their flagship was renamed the Ghost of Reese, and the first target wasn't military, it was symbolic. A council world called Zora Prime, home to their history archives, museums, art, and the oldest genetic records of every species in the Alliance. Briggs ordered total annihilation. Spare no buildings, no monuments, no data. Let them remember nothing but loss. They bombed it for 7 hours straight. By the time they left orbit, there wasn't a single square meter of history left. Only black ash. Across the galaxy, Council citizens panicked. The humans had always been underestimated, but this was no longer rebellion. This was strategic rage, and it was contagious. Other planets, previously bound by fear of the Council, began to riot, not in favor of Earth, but against their own rulers. If they can bleed, a protester said on live broadcast, then we are not slaves. The Council regrouped. They deployed the Purge Protocol, a banned military tactic used only once in history, a biological weapon called Cyrix 9, airborne, invisible, designed to target human DNA specifically and kill within 90 seconds of exposure. They dropped it into Earth's upper atmosphere over the southern hemisphere. 5 warships, 5 payloads. But something happened. Nothing died. No alarms, no sickness. No screams. The ships that dropped the weapon were ambushed mid-retreat by cloaked fighters they didn't even detect until after impact. 4 of the 5 were destroyed. The 5th was hijacked and turned around, crashing into a Council listening station on a distant moon, wiping it from the system. What the Council didn't know was that Earth had already intercepted the weapon specs weeks earlier. Reese's data haul from Marith 4 had it all, and instead of fearing it, Earth reverse-engineered the virus. They rebuilt it, redesigned it, and reloaded it. Now it could target any non-human species. Earth named it Whisper Rot, and they didn't use it as a bomb. They slipped it into the Council's water filtration systems across a dozen stations using merchant ships and bribed engineers. The deaths were slow, quiet. By the time Council Command knew what was happening, tens of thousands were already rotting from the inside out. Briggs stood in the dark war chamber. Back on Earth, half the room was scorched from a previous raid, walls cracked, wires hanging. He didn't care. He didn't need comfort. Just results. A young tech came in, trembling. Commander, reports say Council civilian colonies are starting to abandon their posts. Refugees are flooding fringe systems. Some say they want to surrender. Briggs didn't even look up. Do they bleed? The tech blinked. What? Briggs turned. Do they bleed? The kid nodded. Briggs stared cold. Then they're not done paying yet. Across the stars, a word began to spread, not in council tongues, not in Earth's dialects, a new word burned into the tongues of smugglers, pirates, defectors, soldiers, slaves. Riskborn. It meant rage, it meant retribution, it meant someone who didn't just fight, but made the stars bleed. It became a religion to some, to others a warning, and to the council a curse. By now, council fleets had gone from offensive to reactive. They couldn't predict where Earth would strike next. Guerrilla cells were popping up in systems they thought were secured. Their own soldiers were refusing orders, terrified of being posted to Earth-targeted sectors. The council president, the same one who had calmly voted to invade Earth a year ago, now sat in a reinforced panic vault, buried beneath a molten planet, his once silver armor now dull with fear. This wasn't supposed to happen, he muttered. You didn't listen, said his guard. You poked the ape. No, the president whispered, eyes haunted. We poked something worse. The council had never sued for peace in its entire history, not once. Not when two member species fought to extinction, not when the Nahari plague devoured 9 systems, not even when an AI uprising wiped out half their central archives. But now they begged. The message came through a flickering, static choke transmission routed through 12 relay satellites, 3 encrypted servers, and 1 reluctantly cooperative trade vessel. Commander Briggs listened to it in silent. The council president's voice was hollow, brittle, and soaked in panic. We acknowledge recent tragedies. We acknowledge Earth's strength. We offer term ceasefire, immediate, full withdrawal of council presence from Sol and adjacent sectors. Reparations can be negotiated. Briggs didn't blink. He stared at the screen with the same face he wore at Reese's grave. Same clenched jaw, same dead eyes. Then he reached over and shut the transmission off mid-sentence. I'm not interested in terms, he said coldly. A lieutenant shifted uneasily beside him. Sir, they're scared. Good. They're offering to pull back. They don't get to decide when this ends. Briggs turned to the room full of hardened commanders, ex-mercenaries, scientists turned weapons engineers, exiles and ghosts. Do you think glassing our cities deserves a ceasefire? Nobody spoke. They called us a disease, a mistake. They wanted our resources, our children, our future. He leaned forward. They don't get to surrender, not yet. Not until every last one of them feels what we felt when the sky burned red and the ground swallowed our people. He made his decision that same night. He would lead Earth's first planetary retaliation. Not a station, not a shipyard, not an outpost, a home world. The chosen target was Jitten, a lush green-blue planet in the heart of Council space, home world of the Dithari species, one of the oldest and most influential voices on the Council. Their representatives were the ones who first proposed Earth's invasion. Briggs wanted them to pay, not just with blood, with legacy. We'll hit their cultural vaults first. He ordered, burn their temples, left their archives, turn their art to ash. Make them feel history vanish. Earth's fleet wasn't massive, but it was relentless. Each ship was a floating coffin of steel and spite, each captain A man who had lost everything. They emerged from slipspace above Jitten like shadows from a nightmare. No warning, no diplomacy. Just fire. Dithari air defenses scrambled, but faltered within minutes. They weren't used to ground invasions. They weren't used to fighting enemies who didn't want to talk. Briggs's flagship, Ghost of Reese, led the charge. They didn't deploy troops, they dropped Tears, Earth's newest orbital bomb. Nicknamed for the long smoke trails they left as they fell. Each one struck with the fury of a god. Betrayed. Temples fell, universities collapsed. Statues that had stood for 1,000 years shattered in a heartbeat. And in the sky, hovering just above the atmosphere, Earth broadcast a looped message in a dozen languages. You wanted our silence. Now listen to the sound of your legacy. Burning. In the Council's central fortress, a panic meeting was held. They didn't speak in diplomatic tones anymore. They screamed, "They're destroying Jitten, our capital." They bypassed every known defense corridor. Hell, where are our reinforcements? But the reinforcements weren't coming. The Council had lost too many supply routes, too many ships had defected. The virus Earth had unleashed, whisper rot, still tore through their communications grid. They were isolated, and worse, they were afraid. The president, now pale and aged, sat silently while chaos exploded around him. He had no orders left to give, no allies left to trust, because Earth had done the one thing no enemy ever had. It had turned the galaxy against them. Back on Jitten, Briggs stood among the ashes of what was once the High Temple of Varan. The building had been 10 stories tall, carved from living crystal, glowing with internal light. Now it was rubble and molten slag. He crouched by the cracked remains of a Dithari sculpture, half melted its once serene face twisted in agony. He picked up a shard, turned it in his gloved hand. Behind him, one of the younger soldiers approached. "Sir, they've retreated, no more resistance." Briggs stood slowly. "Gather the survivors." The soldier blinked. "Orders, sir." "Put them in front of a broadcast feed. Make them watch what happens next." The soldier hesitated. And then Briggs turned. His face was stone. No graves, no mercy, no future. The broadcast went live across every surviving Council-linked relay station. It showed the captured civilians of Jitten, huddled, trembling, forced to watch as Earth's machines raised everything around them. It showed Briggs standing at the heart of their ruins, speaking calmly. "This is the price of arrogance. This is the cost of genocide. You wanted our resources. You wanted our surrender." He leaned closer to the camera, voice dropping low. "Now you'll give us your fear." He clicked a remote. Behind him, the last archive tower, their hall of memories torched, exploded, raining data shards and screams. Transmission cut. In the days that followed, 10 more systems defected from the Council, some out of fear, some out of guilt, all out of respect. And Earth didn't stop. They didn't pause to gloat or negotiate. They just moved on, one by one, targeting not armies but ideas, centers of culture, history, identity. Because Earth didn't want peace. Not anymore. They wanted the Council to forget who they were. In a dim war room bunker on Earth, Briggs sat with a worn notebook. He flipped through it, page after page of names, children, teachers, friends gone. In the glassing, he added one more to the list. Jitnan erased. He didn't smile, he didn't sigh, he just closed the book, set it down, and looked at the map. Hundreds of systems still loyal to the Council. He tapped the next one. Karvesh. Karvesh was barely ash when the order was signed. The once prosperous world had been reduced to a red wasteland. Its oceans boiled off by 3 coordinated orbit strikes, each orchestrated by Earth's satellite-jammed precision software, handcrafted by a team of ex-hackers and disgraced AI engineers who no longer believed in laws. Commander Briggs didn't watch the destruction. He didn't need to. He just stared at the next red dot on the map, one of hundreds, and circled it with a piece of charcoal taken from the ruins of a burned-out Earth schoolhouse. The officer beside him, younger and still pretending hope mattered, finally spoke. Sir, intel suggests the Council is attempting something unconventional, not military. Briggs raised an eyebrow. Assassination, the officer said quietly. They've hired someone, a contract team. Briggs scoffed. They think cutting the head ends the storm. They think you're the only one holding this together. They're wrong. Deep in the crumbling remains of the Council's internal security division, secret team was assembled, 4 beings. None of them citizens, all of them ghosts. The Council called them Unit 0 because officially they had never existed. Mercenaries, bounty hunters, and failed experiments pulled from the black archives of forgotten wars. Their target, Briggs, the most wanted human in galactic history. Reward for proof of death. 7 Council worlds worth of credits. But they weren't doing it for money. They were doing it because they were told he was a myth. And they didn't believe in myths. Briggs knew they'd come eventually. He didn't flinch. He moved his command to a decommissioned orbital wreck called Sky Grave, a forgotten mining station, orbiting the blackened husk of Earth's first space elevator, a place irradiated even Council drones avoided it. The perfect trap. He posted no guards, broadcasted no alerts, just waited. They arrived in silence, no fanfare, no explosion. Just 4 figures in vacuum black armor, moving through the halls like shadows, with weapons fused to their bones. Their language wasn't spoken, it was thought. The first, a serpentine creature called Sierra, moved through vents, skin changing color to match metal. The second, a hulking brute bred for war, known only as the Maw, carried a gravity hammer so dense it bent air. The third, a cybernetic telepath named Driss, could fry synapses with a blink. And the fourth, no one knew. Just called Null, no heat signature, no voice, no face, only death. Briggs sat at the center of the station, alone, lit by a single flickering bulb. He held no weapon, just a glass of melted snow and a data pad. The first to enter was Driss. He blinked. Briggs didn't move. Thought killer, right? Briggs said calmly. Sends electric shock waves through your frontal lobe, feels like a stroke and a heart attack rolled together. Driss blinked again. Nothing happened. Briggs smiled. You're trying, I can feel it. Thing is, I had my cortex rewired 2 years ago. Brain's not where you think it is anymore. He pulled a small trigger from under the chair. The room flooded with a high frequency pulse. Driss's eyes exploded. He collapsed, screaming blood. Briggs didn't blink. Sierra tried to sneak through the vent. Above, the second she descended, the vent collapsed, crushed her spine. Metal teeth. Briggs had welded sharpened scrap inside the ventilation shaft hours before. He didn't shoot her, just watched her bleed out as she clawed across the floor. The maw came last, charging through the corridor, walls shaking, roaring, swinging the gravity hammer like the planet owed him blood. Briggs stood still until the hallway floor beneath the maw gave out. He fell 30 m into a reactor tunnel. When he climbed out, burned and limping, Briggs met him with a crowbar. Reese's crowbar. It cracked skull before it cracked bone. The maw didn't scream. He fell. Null never showed. Briggs knew why. Null was already dead. He'd poisoned the air in the shuttle before they landed. Killed the ghost before the mission even started. Briggs sat alone again. 4 bodies in silence. No alarm, no applause. Just war. Back on Earth, when news reached the underground stronghold, the soldiers didn't cheer. They didn't throw fists or drink in celebration. They just nodded. Because in Earth's new war, survival wasn't a victory, it was the expectation. Briggs looked out the cracked viewport of Skygrave. The stars blinked like they were watching. He picked up the data pad again. The next objective flashed red. A system called Catherine's Cradle. Council breeding world, where they raised the next generation of leaders. Diplomats, strategists, where younglings were taught Earth was a mistake, stain, and accident. Briggs tapped the pad. Green light approved. But this time Earth wouldn't just strike with bombs, they would strike with something new, something massive. Goliath. Goliath was born from Reese's last sketches, plans found in a damaged journal recovered from his original crash site, an orbital machine the size of a small moon, not designed to fire, not to kill, but to crush. Drop from orbit, erase the concept of geography. When it hit, it wouldn't explode. It would bury a planet's legacy in its own soil, built in orbit around Mars. Over 7 months, Goliath was constructed in silence, hidden behind comms blockers and visual cloaks, each part carried by unmarked ships from across Earth's underground network. Only a dozen people had seen it, even fewer believed it would ever fly. Briggs stood beneath it now, staring up. I want it aimed at Catherine's cradle. The engineer beside him hesitated. Sir, that world has no weapons. It's educational, civilian. Briggs's jaw twitched. His voice was iron. They raised the monsters who glassed our children. Understood. The council begged again. This time with urgency. We surrender. The president finally said, we admit defeat, we disband. We offer access to our archives to all territories. Just please. Briggs responded with a single message. You should have done that before we buried Reese. Goliath fell 3 days later. It entered Catherine's atmosphere like a god with no face. It didn't explode, it didn't radiate, it simply landed with the weight of Earth's pain behind it. The impact registered as a planetary extinction event. No survivors, no signal, no mercy. Back in Skygrave, Briggs updated the map. Another dot, another grave. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered, Reese. They finally understand. The day the council officially dissolved, there was no ceremony, no Farewell broadcast, no proud final. Speech, just a blinking notice sent across every surviving comms relay. The Galactic Council hereby ceases all operations indefinitely. Member species may pursue independent governance. Earth is not to be provoked. That was it. The ruling body of the galaxy, undisputed for over 3 millennia, folded in a single paragraph, brought to its knees not by superior numbers, not by advanced technology, but by the sheer undeniable will of a planet they once voted to extinguish. Earth had won. The war was over. But no one on Earth smiled. No champagne, no parades, no global celebration, because Earth hadn't survived. It had changed. Briggs stood alone in the control chamber of Skygrave, staring at the map. For the last time, most of the dots were gone now, faded, burned out. Some were still red, active, dangerous. But they weren't council, they were fragments, broken systems, scattered warlords, pirate bands trying to carve empires from what Earth had left behind. He shut the map off. There was no one left to fight, only the silence of victory. Back on Earth, the skies were gray. The cities, what remained of them, were rebuilding slowly, but no one called it peace. You don't call it peace when children are still coughing up ash. You don't call it peace when oceans glow from radiation. You don't call it peace when you can still hear the glass soil crack under your boots. Reese's grave, deep in the Alaskan tundra, was untouched. Even now, soldiers came every week, not to cry, not to talk, just to stand to remember not what he did, but what they had to become because of it. Briggs didn't return to Earth. He stayed in orbit, command anchored to the wreckage of war. He didn't smile, didn't speak much, just watched. Because war changes a man, and winning, that changes him worse. 7 weeks after the Council's fall, the surviving species began reaching out one by one, not with demands or threats, but with apologies, with offers, with fear. They called Earth the Black Sun, a force too heavy to orbit, too dangerous to ignore, and so they bent the knee. World after world, planet after planet. Not because they believed in Earth's vision, but because they were terrified of what Earth could do without one. The first proposal for a new order came from Earth's own northern faction, ex-military tacticians who'd worked beside Reese, now hungry for structure. A single law, they called it. A new code, not peace but control. They called it the Ash Pact. Under it, Earth would no longer conquer, but Earth would also never be questioned again. If a system resisted, they would be reminded gently, then violently. Briggs didn't write the Ash Pact. He didn't even read it. He just approved it, because in the end the war had eaten something inside him, something vital, something human. He had watched worlds burn, watched good men turn savage, watched boys become weapons, and now he watched as the galaxy made gods out of the very species they once wanted to erase. There was no more us in them, no rebels, no council, just Earth, and everything Earth owned. The first rebellion came 6 months later. A border colony deep in the ruins of former council space. Minor, poor, desperate, they refused to pay tribute, refused to hang Earth's new flag, said they didn't believe the stories, said Earth was mortal. Briggs didn't send an army, he sent a transmission, just footage. Merith 4, Reese's crowbar. The moment Goliath hit Catherine's cradle, By nightfall, the colony leaders surrendered. By morning, they were gone. Their cities leveled not by warships, but by terraformers engineered to erase architecture down to the soil. That was the new war. It wasn't fought, it was enforced. In time, Earth became less a name and more a concept, a warning, a myth. Whispers passed in the dark of space stations. Don't challenge the black sun. Don't make Earth look at you twice. Don't speak Reese's name unless you're ready to bleed for it. But not all humans were proud. Some had begun to fracture, question the legacy they were building. Veterans mostly, ones who remember what it was like before the sky fell. Ones who remembered the faces of the dead. Some refused the ash pact, others disappeared into the void. There were rumors of a hidden fleet, rogue Earthborn ex-commanders, former soldiers building their own sanctuary beyond the rim, not out of hatred for Earth, but sorrow, because deep down they knew Reese didn't die so Earth could become the thing it hated. Briggs heard the rumors. He didn't act. He just watched, because some part of him, buried under rage and years of war, still whispered that maybe they were right, that maybe somewhere out there Reese would have drawn the line. But it was too late now. The war had become a system, and Earth was the architect. On the 10-year anniversary of the vote to invade Earth, a monument was unveiled, not by humans, by aliens. A shattered world called Deland 6, once a council puppet, now an Earth ally, erected it on their capital's highest peak. No names, no flags, just a single black stone with one sentence carved into it. You voted to destroy us. We voted to become something worse. Briggs never visited. He was dead 6 months later, quietly, alone in orbit. No ceremony, no funeral, just a ship drifting through space, lights off. Message on repeat. It played Reese's voice, a recovered snippet from a mission log, warped in. Frayed. I'm not here to win. I'm here to make sure they never forget what we are. Earth didn't forget. The galaxy never could. Epilogue. They voted to invade Earth. They wanted minerals, land, labor. What they got was a species that bled and still stood, that crawled out of the dirt with broken bones and said, try harder. They got fire, ruin, and silence. They got Reese. They got Briggs. They got a graveyard of legends and a future written in ash.